Do you know Sarah later left Abraham? I was reading while we were in that our last discussion. I think it was the last video, second to the last video, about Abraham going to sacrifice Isaac. While reading it, I got to a point and I was asking myself, was Sarah truly around? You remember that we said there was no mention of Abraham telling his wife about his plan to go sacrifice his son. And I was like, was Sarah really in that house? Because I read something else. The gist is plenty. But let me start from where you will grab the story. Still on Genesis chapter 22, verse 7. When Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, he was going with some of his men and then he was going with Isaac. But there was no animal they were going with. And so when they got to a place, the Bible says Abraham looked up and saw the place they were going. And then he told his men, please stay here. I will go with Isaac. I'll continue with Isaac. So his men stayed. Abraham continued with his son. Verse 7 says, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father, yes, my son. Abraham replied, we have the fire and the wood, the boy said, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham replied, and they both walked on together. Isaac was a boy. He was a little boy, but he could talk. He had seen his father severally sacrifice to the Lord, and he knew it was with animals. But on that day, there was no animal, so he had to ask. So when I read that passage, I also asked myself, do you mean to tell me that Sarah was in the house, saw Abraham live with his son Isaac, with his men, and no animal, and yet he said he was going to do a sacrifice? What was he going to sacrifice? I asked that question, but I still brushed it aside. The Bible did not mention anything about Sarah asking or Abraham telling Sarah. So I just left it at that until I got to the next chapter. That is where I saw the gist. But wait, calm down. We are still getting there. When Abraham got to the place of the sacrifice, the Bible said he tied Isaac hands and feet, and then he laid him on the table about to sacrifice him. And the angel of the Lord spoke and told him, stop, don't do that. And then pointed at a ram for him and told him, use that ram for the sacrifice instead. And Abraham used the ram. And the Lord blessed Abraham. He told Abraham, I swear by my name that I will definitely bless you. Because God saw how he was ready to sacrifice his only son. God swore by his name, because there is nothing greater. Now, after he had done that, and they had finished all the sacrifice at the mountain, they left. They came down to meet the other men that were waiting for them at the foot of the mountain. So let's read it from the Bible. It's in the same book of Genesis chapter 22, verse 19. Then they returned to the servants and traveled back to Beersheba, where Abraham continued to live. There is a reason the Bible specified it. The Bible didn't mention that Abraham later moved from Beersheba to anywhere. Abraham continued to live in Beersheba. Note it, hold it. The next chapter started with, that's chapter 23 of Genesis. When Sarah was 127 years old, Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham was in Beersheba. Sarah was in Hebron. Two different places. Why was it so? When I read it, I said, it is now I can understand why Sarah why Sarah was not in the picture of that going to sacrifice Isaac. Why, there was no mention of Abraham telling Sarah or Sarah fighting it or something. I said, she was not there. So why did she leave, or why was she not there? So I started, trying to find out, where was she now? What happened? What's the full gist? Guess what? There are a lot of schools of thoughts on it, and so I'm going to give us one or two schools of thought on it, and then I'm going to give us my own thoughts on it.